My beloved child. Today, something quietly shifted in a home you have never fully seen, yet one that has been connected to your journey in ways you could not imagine. While you were tending to your ordinary moments, wondering if your prayers had drifted into silence, your name found its way into a conversation that no one planned to have. It began in the stillness. Not with raised voices. Not with conflict. But with a pause. One person looked across the room, as though searching for the right words, and then spoke your name with unexpected tenderness. The room grew quiet. Even those who usually changed the subject remained still, as if they sensed that this conversation carried more weight than anyone expected. You have wondered for so long if your presence truly mattered. You have questioned whether the kindness you offered, the patience you carried, and the love you protected inside your heart had ever been noticed. Today, you are being reminded that quiet goodness leaves echoes. The people gathered in that home were not simply discussing a person. They were reflecting on a feeling. A memory. A peace that appeared whenever they thought of you. Even those who once knew very little about your heart began to recognize something they had overlooked before. And that realization did not happen by accident. Sometimes grace works in silence long before it reveals itself in visible ways. Perhaps you have spent nights asking why every door seemed delayed. Why every hopeful beginning felt unfinished. Why every prayer seemed to return without an answer. Yet while you believed nothing was moving, unseen pieces were finding their proper place. That is often how meaningful change begins. Not with loud announcements, but with quiet conversations. One family member recalled something you once said. Another remembered the way you remained respectful when life gave you every reason not to be. Someone else admitted they had misunderstood your intentions from the beginning. None of them expected those memories to return today. Yet they did. And every memory carried a question no one had asked before. What if they had judged too quickly? What if your patience had revealed a strength they failed to recognize? What if the delays that frustrated everyone were never obstacles at all, but protection for every heart involved? Those questions lingered in the room long after the conversation should have ended. If this sounds familiar, it may be because you know what it feels like to wait without explanation. You understand silent sacrifices. You know the quiet ache of hoping that one day people will see your heart instead of only your circumstances. Heaven has never ignored those hidden moments. Every tear you chose not to show. Every prayer whispered after everyone else had gone to sleep. Every act of forgiveness that no one applauded. None of it was wasted. What happened inside that home today was not created by pressure. It grew from understanding. One by one, perspectives began to soften. Someone who had remained cautious started asking different questions. Someone who once hesitated began defending your character. Someone who had never met you personally admitted they already felt they knew the kind of person you were because of the peace your name seemed to bring into the room. But that was not the moment that changed everything. The real turning point came when the oldest voice in the room finally spoke. Until then, that person had listened more than they talked. Every glance. Every silence. Every emotion had been carefully observed. When they finally broke the silence, everyone else stopped speaking. The words were calm. Measured. Filled with wisdom earned through years of life's victories and disappointments. They did not focus on appearances. They did not ask about status. Instead, they asked a single question that caused every person in the room to reconsider everything they believed. The room became completely still. Some lowered their eyes. Others exchanged uncertain looks. Because suddenly the conversation was no longer about assumptions. It became about truth. And truth has a gentle way of revealing what pride often hides. Perhaps you have felt forgotten lately. Perhaps you wondered whether your season of waiting would ever become a season of joy. Hold on to hope a little longer. Not because life is free from hardship, but because faithful hearts are often being prepared for blessings they cannot yet see. Even now, pieces are moving beyond your sight. Hearts are becoming softer. Old opinions are quietly fading. Doors that once seemed firmly closed are no longer being locked. Yet what happened next was never meant to be revealed all at once. Because after that wise question was answered, one unexpected person stood up, walked toward the window, looked into the distance, and quietly spoke a sentence that changed the entire direction of the conversation. And that sentence is where everything begins to unfold. The sentence hung in the air long after it was spoken. No one rushed to answer. No one interrupted. It carried the kind of quiet authority that does not demand attention because it naturally receives it. The person standing by the window never raised their voice. Instead, they spoke with the calm certainty that often comes only after years of watching life unfold in unexpected ways. I believe we have been looking at this story from the wrong direction. Those words settled into every heart in the room. Until that moment, each person had been weighing opinions, memories, and assumptions. But suddenly, they began looking beyond appearances. They started asking what truly matters when two lives are brought together, not by pressure, but through patience, character, and grace. One family member folded their hands and whispered, "Maybe we were waiting for perfection when we should have been paying attention to peace." The room grew even quieter. Peace. It was a simple word, yet it carried extraordinary meaning. Because peace cannot be manufactured. It cannot be forced by promises or appearances. It quietly reveals itself where trust, kindness, and sincerity have taken root. And without realizing it, they were describing the very qualities that had followed your name throughout the conversation. You have often wondered whether people could truly see who you are beneath the responsibilities, the disappointments, and the silent burdens you have carried. Today, you are being reminded that your character has been speaking on your behalf even when you were nowhere near the room. That is one of life's quiet miracles. The kindness you offer when no one is watching. The patience you show when answers are delayed. The grace you extend when it would be easier to become bitter. These things leave impressions that time cannot easily erase. One person leaned forward and admitted something that surprised everyone. "I used to think waiting meant nothing was happening." Another nodded slowly. "But now I wonder if waiting has been preparing all of us." Those words unlocked a new realization. Perhaps the delay was never only about you. Perhaps every heart involved needed time to grow. Some needed humility. Some needed wisdom. Some needed healing from old disappointments that had nothing to do with you, yet quietly influenced the way they viewed every new possibility. This is why divine timing often feels confusing while we are living through it. We see the calendar. Heaven sees the preparation. If you have ever prayed and wondered why the answer seemed slower than expected, remember this moment. Sometimes the greatest answer is not immediate movement. Sometimes it is quiet transformation. As the conversation continued, someone opened an old photo album that had been resting untouched for years. No one had planned to look through it. Yet page after page seemed to awaken memories that had long been forgotten. Stories were shared. Smiles returned. Lessons from the past gently resurfaced. One older relative reflected on a relationship that almost never happened because fear had spoken louder than faith. Another recalled how one misunderstanding nearly separated two people who later became the greatest blessing in each other's lives. Those stories were not told to entertain the room. They were gentle reminders that first impressions do not always reveal final outcomes. And perhaps that reminder was needed more than anyone realized. If this message resonates with you, it may be because you have experienced being misunderstood. You know what it feels like when your intentions are questioned despite your sincerity. You understand how exhausting it can be to carry hope while wondering whether anyone else believes with you. Take comfort. The chapters you cannot see are often shaping the ending you have been praying for. Then something unexpected happened. The youngest person in the room, who had remained unusually quiet until now, asked a question that no adult had considered. It was innocent. Simple. Yet impossible to ignore. If everyone keeps saying such kind things, why are we still afraid? Silence returned. Not because no one had an answer, but because every heart recognized the truth inside that question. Fear has a way of disguising itself as caution. Past disappointments sometimes pretend to be wisdom. Old wounds often convince people to protect themselves from future joy. The room slowly began to understand that they were not simply discussing another person's future. They were deciding whether they would allow fear to continue writing the story. But that was not the moment that changed everything. What happened next came from someone who had remained completely silent since the conversation began. No one expected this person to speak. In fact, everyone assumed they disagreed with what had been said. Yet they slowly lifted their eyes, took a deep breath, and reached into a small wooden drawer beside them. Inside was an object no one had seen in many years. The moment it was placed on the table, every face changed. Because hidden inside that simple object was a forgotten truth. A truth connected to you in a way no one in the room had ever fully understood. And when its meaning was finally explained, there would be no returning to the way things were before. No one reached for the object. They simply stared at it. Its presence seemed to slow time itself, as though every heartbeat in the room was waiting for someone brave enough to speak first. The person who had placed it on the table rested a gentle hand beside it and smiled with quiet understanding. "It has been here all along," they said softly. "We simply stopped noticing it." Those words settled into every corner of the room. How often does life hide its greatest lessons in places we pass every day? How many answers arrive long before we are ready to recognize them? The object itself was ordinary. It held no great value in the eyes of the world. Yet it carried a memory that every member of the family suddenly remembered at the same time. Years earlier, during a difficult season, someone in that home had made a promise. Not a promise about wealth. Not about comfort. But about the kind of person they hoped would one day become part of their family. They had spoken of someone whose strength would be measured by compassion rather than pride. Someone who would remain kind even when misunderstood. Someone whose faith would stay steady when circumstances became uncertain. As those words were recalled, an unexpected realization spread across the room. Without intending to, they had spent years searching for qualities that had quietly been present all along. No one spoke your name. They did not need to. Every description naturally led back to you. One person slowly wiped away a tear. Another lowered their head in quiet reflection. Not because they felt regret alone, but because they realized how easily people overlook goodness while searching for something extraordinary. Yet genuine love has never depended on perfection. It grows where honesty, patience, and grace are given room to breathe. If you have ever felt unnoticed, if you have wondered whether your quiet acts of love mattered, this moment is for you. Your value has never been determined by how quickly others recognized it. The deepest roots grow where no one can see them. And when the season is right, they become impossible to ignore. As the conversation continued, stories began flowing naturally. Someone remembered your generosity. Another remembered your humility. Someone else recalled how you had brought calm into a difficult situation without asking for recognition afterward. Each memory seemed small by itself. Together, they painted a picture no one had expected. A picture of consistency. Because character is not revealed through one remarkable moment. It is revealed through hundreds of ordinary choices made with a faithful heart. One older voice quietly observed, "People can pretend for a day, but they cannot pretend for years." The room nodded in agreement. There was comfort in that truth. Masks eventually fall away. But kindness that has become part of someone's nature continues speaking long after words have ended. Perhaps that is what has been happening in your own life. You believed your quiet faithfulness was unnoticed. Yet every unseen act was becoming part of a story that others were only now beginning to understand. If this sounds familiar, remember this. Not every harvest appears the moment the seed is planted. Some blessings mature beneath the surface long before they rise into view. Then, just as the atmosphere softened, another question was asked. It was not spoken with doubt. It was spoken with hope. What if this is the answer we have been praying for, but it arrived differently than we expected? No one answered immediately. Because every person in the room was searching their own heart. Sometimes we expect miracles to arrive with unmistakable signs. Yet many of life's greatest blessings enter quietly. They do not force the door open. They patiently wait until hearts become ready to receive them. That realization brought unexpected peace. The conversation was no longer about uncertainty. It became about possibility. Not a rushed possibility. Not an emotional decision. But one built upon reflection, wisdom, and sincere understanding. Then someone looked toward the family elder and asked gently. So, what should we do now? The elder closed their eyes for a brief moment. Not to avoid the question, but to honor its importance. When they opened their eyes again, there was warmth in them. A quiet confidence that seemed to calm everyone else. They spoke slowly, choosing each word with care. We should never rush what deserves prayer. Everyone agreed. Yet before anyone could speak again, there was an unexpected sound. A phone resting on the nearby table began to ring. No one had been expecting a call. The timing felt almost impossible to ignore. The screen lit up. Every face turned toward it. The person closest to the phone hesitated. Their hand hovered just above it, unsure whether to answer. Because the name appearing on the screen belonged to someone whose voice had not been heard in a very long time. And everyone in that room understood that whatever was about to be said next could reshape the entire conversation in ways none of them were prepared for. For several long seconds, no one moved. The ringing continued, gentle but impossible to ignore. Each tone seemed to ask the same question. Are you ready for what comes next? The person nearest the phone finally reached for it. Their hand trembled ever so slightly, not from fear, but from the awareness that some moments quietly divide life into before and after. They answered. Hello? The room remained perfectly still. No one could hear the voice on the other end, yet every expression revealed that the conversation was far more meaningful than anyone expected. The listener's eyes softened. Then widened. Then filled with emotion. When the call ended, they did not speak immediately. Instead, they looked around the room, taking in every familiar face as though they wanted everyone to fully understand the weight of what had just happened. Finally, they smiled. It seems, they said quietly, that while we were talking here, someone else was reaching the very same conclusion. A gentle wave of surprise moved through the room. No one had planned this. No one had arranged it. Yet separate hearts, in different places, had arrived at the same realization without knowing the others were doing the same. Sometimes life moves like that. The answers you have been praying for begin unfolding in more than one place at once. While you are asking heaven for direction, hearts you cannot see are also being gently guided. That is why patience is never empty. It is often filled with unseen preparation. If you have felt discouraged because nothing appeared to be changing, remember this moment. Not every important conversation happens where you can witness it. Some are taking place behind doors you may never enter. Some happen in the quiet reflections of people who once misunderstood you. Others unfold during sleepless nights, when someone finally becomes honest with themselves. Grace has many ways of reaching a willing heart. As hope settled over the room, one family member admitted something they had carried in silence for a long time. I wasn't protecting our family. They paused, searching for the right words. I was protecting my own fears. No one judged them. Instead, compassion filled the room. Because every person recognized that fear often disguises itself as wisdom. It tells us to stay where everything feels predictable. It encourages us to believe that avoiding risk will also prevent disappointment. Yet love has never grown inside walls built by fear alone. It grows where trust slowly replaces uncertainty. The elder nodded with quiet understanding. We all carry old stories, they said. But we must be careful not to let yesterday decide tomorrow. Those words reached every heart. Perhaps they reach yours as well. Maybe someone once questioned your worth. Maybe circumstances caused you to doubt your own future. Maybe you have spent years wondering whether your season of waiting would ever end. Do not allow yesterday's disappointments to become tomorrow's expectations. Every new chapter deserves the chance to be written without the weight of old pain. As the afternoon light faded through the windows, the atmosphere inside the home changed. The conversation no longer felt heavy. It became hopeful. People began speaking not about obstacles, but about possibilities. Not about what might go wrong, but about what beautiful things could happen if everyone chose faith over fear. Then someone quietly laughed. It was a warm, genuine laugh that surprised even them. I just realized something, they said. We've spent hours talking about this person's kindness, but no one has asked what they have been carrying all this time. Silence returned. This silence was different. It was filled with empathy. For the first time, everyone stopped looking only at their own concerns. They began wondering about yours. Did you also have lonely evenings? Did you quietly question whether your prayers were heard? Did you continue showing kindness even when life felt uncertain? One by one, they imagined the unseen chapters of your story. And something remarkable happened. Respect deepened into compassion. Admiration grew into understanding. Hope became personal. If this message resonates with you, hold this truth close. The people who truly matter eventually begin asking not only what you can bring into their lives, but what they can do to bring peace into yours. That change of perspective is often the beginning of something lasting. But that was not the moment that changed everything. Just as the evening seemed ready to settle into peaceful conversation, there was a gentle knock at the front door. It wasn't expected. No one had invited anyone. The elder looked toward the entrance with quiet curiosity. Another family member slowly opened the door. Standing there was someone carrying a small envelope that had been delayed for far longer than anyone could explain. The envelope was worn with time. Its edges were faded. Across the front, written in careful handwriting, were only a few simple words. The moment those words were read aloud, every conversation stopped. Because everyone suddenly realized that this message had been waiting to arrive, long before today's conversation ever began. And what was written inside that envelope would reveal a truth no one in the house had been prepared to hear. The envelope rested quietly in the elder's hands. No one urged them to open it. Some moments deserve silence before they deserve answers. The paper had softened with age, its edges worn by time, as though it had traveled through seasons before arriving exactly where it was meant to be. The elder traced a finger across the handwriting. Then, almost with a whisper, they said, "Sometimes what arrives late is not truly late, it simply reaches us when our hearts are finally ready." Those words settled over the room like the last light of sunset. How many times have you looked at your own life and believed something had passed you by? How many opportunities did you think were lost forever because they did not appear when you expected them? Yet wisdom often reveals that delayed does not always mean denied. Sometimes it means prepared. With great care, the envelope was opened. Inside was a single folded letter. There was nothing extravagant about it. No official seal. No dramatic announcement. Just honest words written from the heart. The elder unfolded the page and began reading silently. As each line passed before their eyes, their expression changed. First came surprise. Then quiet reflection. Finally, gratitude. Everyone waited. Not impatiently, but respectfully. Because they sensed this letter carried more than information. It carried perspective. When the elder finally looked up, their voice was softer than before. This letter speaks about the kind of home every family hopes to build. The room leaned in. It says that a strong home is not built by perfect people. It is built by people who choose forgiveness after misunderstanding, patience after disappointment, and kindness when it would be easier to walk away. Those words reached every heart. No one argued. Because everyone knew they were true. The letter continued. It spoke about the quiet strength of those who remain faithful through ordinary days. It reminded them that the greatest relationships are rarely formed through grand gestures alone. They are formed through countless moments of consistency. Showing up. Listening. Praying. Encouraging. Choosing hope again after difficult seasons. As the elder read each sentence, the family began exchanging thoughtful glances. Without realizing it, they had spent so much time discussing whether someone would fit into their lives. They had forgotten to ask whether they themselves were becoming the kind of people who could receive such a blessing. That realization changed everything. The conversation became deeply personal. One person admitted they needed to let go of an old disappointment. Another quietly confessed they had allowed fear to speak louder than faith. Someone else smiled through tears and said, "Perhaps we've all been growing, not just one person." If you have ever wondered why your own journey has felt so long, consider this. Growth is rarely meant for only one heart. Sometimes every person connected to the story is being prepared at the same time. Your season of waiting may have been shaping someone else's wisdom. Your quiet faith may have inspired courage in someone you have never even met. Your patience may have given another person the time they needed to heal from yesterday before they could embrace tomorrow. Nothing given to love is ever wasted. Nothing offered with sincerity disappears. Every gentle word. Every act of grace. Every prayer whispered in solitude. They continue traveling long after you release them. If this sounds familiar, perhaps you have underestimated the quiet influence your life has carried. You may have believed your story was standing still. Yet it has been touching lives in ways you could never measure. As evening turned into night, the room grew peaceful. The conversation had changed from uncertainty to gratitude. No one seemed interested in proving themselves right anymore. Instead, they simply wanted to understand what was true. The elder carefully folded the letter and returned it to the envelope. Then they looked around the room with eyes full of hope. "There is one final thing," they said. "I have kept to myself because I wanted the right moment." Every face turned toward them. The letter reminded me of a conversation I had many months ago. No one interrupted. It was with someone who knew far more than they realized. The elder smiled gently. They shared one simple observation about the person we've been discussing today. The room became completely still. Because whatever had been said months earlier, long before today's conversation, was now about to answer the one question everyone had quietly carried in their hearts. The elder took a slow breath. Repeated those unforgettable words exactly as they had first heard them. And in that instant, every person in the room understood why today's conversation had never been an accident at all.